Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tish Millsap, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing at DotNetNuke Corporation. I'm very happy to be the host of today's web seminar, Introduction to Social Interaction Design. Our speaker today is Ryan Martinez, who heads up UI UX designing at DotNetNuke. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. And welcome, Ryan.
Good morning.
Before we get started, thanks, Ryan. So before we get started, we just want to do some quick housekeeping. I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with the web seminar platform. Please look at your GoToWebinar control panel. There's a little button where you can virtually raise your hand. If you could just raise your hand and let me know that you can hear me. Okay, looks like we're good there. And if you can see my slide, please use the raise your hand feature again and let me know. Okay, sounds like we're good. I just want to let everybody know we're going to be going over a lot of information. If you have questions at any time, please be sure to use the Ask a Question feature in the GoToWebinar software. You can ask your question at any time, and at the end of the presentation we will have time for a few questions. If we're not able to get to all the questions, we will attempt to respond to you via email in the next day or two. Given how many people are on the line, I have a feeling we'll have a lot of questions, so we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Before we get started with Ryan, I want to talk a little bit about DotNetNuke, just a couple of minutes. We're a software company. We have a web content management system with a bunch of additional capabilities. One common theme that we come across with customers is the problem of business agility. By that, I mean that they struggle with doing things faster, doing them more efficiently, as well as affordably, and scaling their business in an environment of unpredictable change. I'd like for you for just a minute to think back to the year 2000 and what the internet was like then. At that time, the web was very static. But as you know, in the past 10 years, things have changed dramatically. But who could have predicted the growth in social interactions, how critical mobile devices would become in delivering content? Fundamentally, how we used websites has changed from just a source of information to a place of meaningful interaction anywhere, anytime around the globe. So what we're encouraging our customers and prospects to think about is making the right platform decision that allows you to adapt quickly to that unpredictable change in the web. So again, at DotNetNuke, we're a software company. We have a web content management system with a bunch of additional capabilities, document management, social, and mobile, that allow our customers to adapt quickly, to move fast and take advantage of new opportunities for their online presence. A little bit about the company. We're the world's #1 web content management system in the Microsoft ecosystem. We just about ticked over 2,000 commercial customers, and we are by far the largest and most successful open source project in Microsoft history. Because of that open source nature of our business, there are over 700,000 websites around the world that are powered by DNN. Finally, last but not least, we have a very large and strong community of folks that contribute to the open source project and have a depth of knowledge about DotNetNuke, and they actively participate in continuing the project. Earlier this year, we did a comprehensive survey of our customers, and it was through an independent third party called Tech Validate. We had some really interesting results, really validating the ROI of DotNetNuke. 95% of our DNN customers said they were able to improve their efficiency by using the DotNetNuke platform, and 94% of them said that DotNetNuke allowed them to save time and money in their development process. But we also help our customers get to market faster, and our survey showed that 81% of our customers felt they were able to get to market significantly faster because of DotNetNuke. Just to finish up, DNN comes in 3 different versions: our free community edition, our professional edition, and our enterprise edition, each with its own sets of features and functions. I encourage you to visit our website and learn more about each of these. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, and he will start the presentation. Got it, Ryan?
I have it here, thanks. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for tapping in and listening to this presentation. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. It's something that I'm really quite passionate about, and I think once you hear what I have to say, I think you will be too. So what we're looking at here is actually a presentation that I had done at DNN World. If you haven't been to one of our conferences, definitely you have to check one out. We're a lot more fun in person, so. All right, so what we're going to be talking about is social interaction design, and actually I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to do that in social applications as well. So one of the things I want to talk about before I get into this is that this talk is really, I want to look at what makes social systems more successful than others. What makes Facebook and all these guys, what's their kind of secret recipe? And I think one of these things is that, or not one of these things, but the things that kind of contribute to a successful system is, how they're built, exposure, marketing, how they're managed once they're up and running, and a little bit of luck. And of these four, three of them we can control, but specifically what I want to talk about in this presentation is how they're built. So, so without further ado, let's. There we go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself first. Who I am. So of course I'm Ryan Martinez. I'm the Senior UI UX Designer at DotNetNuke. I have been doing interface design since about 2003. I actually started out doing web design, subcontracting web design, and helped basically put my way through school doing that. When it came out, I wanted to take it a little bit more seriously, and I started working with a company called Spincaster. It was kind of a boutique shop, and we started out doing websites, but we had kind of progressed into doing online applications. So I had worked on a number of learning management systems, social systems like social networks, intranets. So it was a lot of experience was gained out of that working with Spincaster. And then from that, actually, I was asked to talk at a school. I had done that a couple of times and was eventually asked to become an instructor. So I ended up teaching for 2.5 years, where I created and delivered a course on user interface design. So this is something that I'm quite passionate about, and hopefully that comes across in this presentation. So if you have any questions or you just want to contact me, I have my contact information. There's my Twitter, which is really a design, and then if you want to email me, it's ryan.martinez@dnncorp.com. All right, so one other thing before I start getting into this talk is that this talk's not really about, I'm not going to give you a set of rules. I think it's, I really want to change your point of view. I remember when I was in high school, I had a teacher of mine, and I think she recognized that I was struggling with the subject. I think it was biology, and she said to me, at the time we were all taught to learn everything using cue cards, and she said, well, why don't you try doing mind maps? And so I started doing mind maps, and instantly everything just became clear to me. And I think it's, it's the exact same information. It's just a different, a different attitude, a different way of looking at the information. I think that's what I want to do with this talk, is sort of let's enlighten and look at the problem from a different point of view. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to be looking at in this talk is, partially from what I've learned from experience, but also from, research that's out there and some of the other ideas that people have, and I've kind of consolidated together into this talk. And so I guess the idea is that I am going to try to deliver this stuff or this information in a means that is basically anybody can digest. So I also had a professor that told me once that if you can't teach in plain English, then you don't really know what you're talking about. So I'm going to try to do that for you guys today. Okay, so this talk is going to be split into two parts. We're going to talk about defining social. So we define what the problem is. So what is social, and why is it important? Why should we start considering, designing and coming up with a social strategy? And then the second part is actually, how do we facilitate that? How do we actually get into designing for social media and the social interaction, some of those tools of social interaction? So let's get into it. So defining social. So the first one's social media. And typically when people think of social media, they think of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And that's right. That's social media. And what they are is networked applications that basically permit direct and indirect and private and public communication and interaction between human beings. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a computer. It can be on a mobile device or a game platform like your Xbox or Sony PlayStation. So we're starting to see sort of this proliferation of where the social, the social is taking place. And what the interesting thing about social is that it's engaging the participation of users. This is kind of contrasts strongly from what we had seen in the past, which is, like we looked at Trish's slide earlier, which is in the early 2000s, most of the sites were brochures, so it was mostly about, going through pages and looking at information. And now we're seeing this, people are actually coming, we have retentive actions going on. So that's a huge change with social media that we hadn't seen in the past. And the really cool thing about social media is what it's doing, it's empowering the marketplace with its power of communication. And we have seen these terms kind of coming up, like the citizen journalist, where people are going out there and taking photos of events, and the news is being pushed out there before some formal communication, like a newspaper or like BBC or something like that. Actually, in China recently, they had an earthquake. It was like a 7.8. And the news had gone online through Twitter faster than BBC or even the Chinese news had a chance to basically say anything about it. And this contrasts so strongly from what had happened in the previous earthquake of the same magnitude, which it took like about almost 3 months before China could even admit that there was an earthquake. So it just goes to show you the true power of social media. So it's really what's going on here is that we're changing the way our culture produces and consumes this information and the value that's associated with it. So that's social media. So the next one is social interaction design. And what social interaction design is really designing to facilitate the social media. And what it's doing is it's pulling from psychology, collaborative systems, user-centered design, and a bunch of other concepts. And what we're doing is we're shaping and forming and organizing and structuring and arranging the social talk that goes on within social interactions. All right. So like I was saying, typically when people think of social media or social network applications, we think of Facebook, LinkedIn, Skype, Twitter, YouTube. So there's all these things kind of on the outside that your business kind of pushes stuff out to, or but what I really want to talk about is your social application within your system. And I don't know if anybody had if anybody online here had a chance to come to DNN World, but Naveen had a really interesting keynote talking about social and how it's important to have your social within your system. And I'm going to basically elaborate on that in this talk. So what's the big deal? What's the big deal about social? Well, the first part is that in the past we've always thought of social being, with social media, at least from a business perspective, it's all about outbound marketing. So basically you release a product and then you push that out to Facebook and Twitter, and you basically maximize exposure. And the problem with this is that there's sort of a limited ROI. You're not really taking advantage of the power of social. So there's sort of the lack of transformation. So I think there's sort of a paradigm shift that's happening in the market, and we're starting to see the potential that social has to move things and even produce content that you can work with in your own company. So the thing about social is, and the reason why we want to focus on having it within your own system, is that you can adapt and change and see what's going on. So you have the ability to have the analytics to see, well, what's happening, what are these people talking about, and be proactive. Like, oh, we're noticing that people are talking about this particular product and what it could do, and how cool would it be if it could do that. So if you have a local social application, you can take that information and actually start making strategic moves with that information. From a brand perspective, you have the ability to see what people are saying about your company, and you can use that to sort of guide the conversation. And this is something that's much harder to do on Facebook or on Twitter, because it's much more of a reactive, where you can be proactive with your own system. So these are a couple of reasons why I think it's really necessary to start thinking of a strategy and social. But that's really, it's sort of an afterthought. What I really want to talk about is how I think, or why I think social is going to become a necessity. And I think we're sort of coming up to a point where, like in the early 2000s, if you didn't have a web strategy, if you weren't going online, you're sort of kind of left behind because of the convenience factor. So people would, like look for a hammer online, and if you didn't have a website that was selling that hammer, they'd go to the next guy that was. So a lot of businesses sort of had to get into the web because they had to. And I think we're kind of coming to that stage when it comes to social. So we're looking at this necessity. And the reason why I say this is I want to talk about 4 concepts that were sort of proposed about, let's say, even within the last 20 years. And these concepts have sort of come to fruition, and by seeing this trend, we can kind of get an idea of where we're going. And then I think we'll be able to see why it will become a necessity. So these concepts were ubiquitous computing, pervasive computing, augmented reality, and ambient intelligence. So let's look at these guys. So the first one is ubiquitous computing. And ubiquitous computing was actually proposed by Mike Weiser in 1991. He was a member of the research Xerox PARC team, the Palo Alto Research Center. And what he proposed was that computation, like basically computers, would be in every mundane, everyday artifact. And so this really was a conceptual breakthrough of how we basically interacted with computers. Because at the time, in the 1990s, or even the 80s, really, we basically had a time box sort of experience with computers. Like I'd sit down, write my email, that's the end of my computer experience, and I'd walk away. And that's how we felt about computers. But this is the idea that having these computers running and constantly doing things in the background for us, that was a completely different kind of mindset than what we had previously had. And so it's here now, right? Like if you look at a lot of your cars, they have chips in there that are regulating the gasoline and the air, and they're constantly adjusting for errors that your engine might be having. Thermostats in your house, a lot of the smart houses now have chips that regulate the temperature in your house. So we have these things that we're not directly interacting with, but they're around us, computing, doing things for us every day. So they're kind of embedded and invisible. So this is ubiquitous computing. So it's here. So the next one is pervasive computing. And this one's often confused with ubiquitous computing, but they're different. So where they're similar is that they're around us every day, and they're sort of in our environment. But the thing is, though, is that these are the computer devices or computing devices that we actually interact with. And so these devices are getting progressively smaller and more powerful. And we have this now. A lot of people own smartphones. Actually, more people own smartphones than they own toothbrushes, according to Google. So the next one is that it doesn't necessarily even have to be computers. It could be computers that are embedded in, not smartphones, but it could be computers that are embedded in your clothing and your tools. A good example of this is Nike. They released a sort of like a gizmo that you could put in your shoes. So when you went for a run, it would basically communicate with your phone, and then it would basically record this information. So there's this computing that's going on without you really being aware of it. Okay, so the next one is augmented reality. And augmented reality, basically what's happening is you have this overlaying physical reality with digital information, and there's this linking and tagging that's going on. So the image that you're looking at here is someone wearing the Google goggles. So this is a really extreme version of augmented reality. I like technology, but I don't think you'd ever catch me dead wearing this. So, but it's a really cool concept. But this is sort of an extreme version, but there is augmented reality around us that that we're interacting with. So, to a lesser degree, Foursquare would be an example of something that would be like augmented reality. Google Maps is another example of augmented reality. There was an app called Yelp, which used your camera on your phone, and you could walk around and look at buildings, and it would tell you this. This hotel was 5 stars, and all the comments that people had made about that particular hotel. So augmented reality is here as well. So the next one, or the last of the 4, is ambient intelligence, and this one is actually the coolest one of all. Really, it takes the first 3 and kind of puts it together and makes it smart. Sort of in geek terms, it's computational objects are not only connected, but they're also adaptive and responsive in this proactive way. So basically, you have this thing that's looking at your environment and adapting and looks at what do you need to do, and it basically serves that in a manner that basically optimizes your life. And an example of this is this is already happening. There's a company called Calcom, and they have a product called Gibble, and it's a contextualized awareness program is what they're releasing, and it's going to be available for iOS and for Android. And what this does is it takes the data from all the sensors in your phone, your accelerometer, your GPS, your compass, in your phone, and then makes sense of them, and then delivers a sort of a to-do list based off of, like where you're at. So I could be, driving, and it realizes that I'm in a car driving, and it says, well, maybe you should take this route here because the traffic is pretty bad, and while you're on this route, you have to pick up a hammer, and there's a sale on hammers coincidentally on this route, so maybe you should take this route. So there's sort of this, it's almost like a personal assistant. And so ambient intelligence is here. So what's the big deal? Well, these ideas have been proposed and they're starting to come to fruition. And what's happening is that we're no longer having this sort of time-boxed experience with computers. We're starting to interact with them more and more, and it doesn't, you don't have to look too far into the future. You just have to go shopping at the mall and just look at people in lineups, and they're pulling out their phones and interacting with their phones. And what's going to happen is that this is just going to continue to grow. I think we're having this extreme human-computer interaction going on, and what the problem here is that we're going to have this extreme desire to reconnect humanity because we're social beings, right? And so I think social is going to become necessary because of this. I think, as these devices are basically become part of our lives, this necessity to reconnect to human beings is going to become more prevalent. I don't think you can stop using these devices. I think they're going to become part of our lives. I think by using these devices to help facilitate social interactions much better, I think is a much more likely route. All right, so we're social beings, and we've been socializing, for a long time. So like the Greek agora, the marketplace, town square, the water cooler. I'm missing my favorite image, which is the pub. But we've been socializing for ages. That's what we do as human beings. That's one of the reasons why, as a race, we've come as far as we have. And the reason is because we grow and learn through these social interactions. And some of our most profound experiences actually involve making a connection with another human being. And so I'm talking sort of like on a one-to-one basis, but also if you look at sort of a group atmosphere, or a group interaction, what we do is we have this really unique thing where we form a collective goal as a group, and then we fight for that goal, and we drop any of our petty differences. And this is the true power of social, and something that we haven't really been able to tap into quite yet. But it's coming. So I think, and this is actually, this collective goal is one of the reasons, is forming a group is one of the reasons why, we see these structures all around us. We form groups, we form companies, we form governments, and we work together toward that goal as a group. So I think with this, the power of social and an idea that we can form these collective goals and work together toward it. Also the fact that we have the convenience of having unlimited resources right next to us. So if we look at that power of social, we are able to translate it online. Then we have unlimited resources online. And then to add on top of it that there's no geographical limitations for qualified people, right? So one of the limitations, that we have when it comes to, companies hiring people is that, these qualified people, someone that's really qualified may not be, near your company. So you have to, pay for them to move to relocate, or even come from another company or country rather to your country, and then you have to go through all that paperwork. And but if you can imagine, what if you had a social interface that was so optimized and it was it allowed for those social interactions so well that it wouldn't be necessary to bring them over. They could work just as efficiently through the interface. Well, now we have a much larger pool of qualified people. So we have the power of social, the unlimited resources, and like a much larger pool of qualified people to work with. So that just improves your efficiency. Okay, so that is, we've defined a bit of social and why I think it's necessary to start considering a social strategy. So now let's look at how do we define a solution to this problem? Well, the first one is what is the problem? Well, the solution that we typically take is what's called human-computer interaction. And the problem with that is that the old HCI approach doesn't actually work, right? The old human-computer interaction is a problem with it doesn't really fit with the social interaction method. And what's happening is that the problem is that it's focusing on the isolated user and facilitating their needs and their information finding behaviors. And the other problem is that when we're doing just human-computer interaction, so a person to a computer, it's just one person, and so the behavior is much more predictable. But when it comes to the social application, things become a little bit harder to predict. And this is because human interaction is harder to predict, right? There are more things that are influencing how a conversation takes place, right? Or how these interactions. So there's cultural influences, there's sociological influences. So our old HCI practices don't really take into account these interactions and these social interactions and a lot of the the context of the cultural and the sociological influences. So that's a big problem. The other problem is that the old HCI practices basically focus on the individual, and this is a problem because it really disables that collective nature of human beings of forming that goal and working toward that goal. And a really good example of this is like we look at sports and they say there is no I in team, right? So, but our interfaces are designed to talk to I, talk to me, feed my information to me. And so this is not good for that group effort. It's not good for the group goal. The other problem with this is that when we start looking at social interfaces and we're applying these old HCI practices, what's happening is we got this overload of information, and people are becoming time focused and focused on their position in life, and this causes stress, right? And so there were a couple articles on talking about how Facebook causes depression and because of the comparison, and you see your friends and all this and I think this is partially because of that HCI approach. There has been articles on the contrast, but I do think that this increased focus on yourself is it is disabling from that group approach or that collective goal. Okay, so what is the solution to this problem? Well, I think we need to have a new approach to researching and designing these social applications. I think we really need to change our focus from a human-computer interaction to human-to-human interaction through a computer. So how do we do this? Well, I think we can look at the old HCI approaches and kind of cherry pick, and that's why I have this image here of a lady throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I don't think we necessarily have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I don't think we have to throw out all our own methods. I think we can, from a user interface designer perspective, we can kind of cherry pick through these the old approaches and apply this to solving the social interaction problem online. So let's go through each one of these. So there's technology design. Now, technology design basically is when we design based off of a limitation of a current system. So an example of this would be if I went to a municipality or something like that and said, listen, we're gonna make an addition or do something for your, create a piece of software for you guys. I'm not going to go in and say, listen, we have to kibosh the whole project because likely, the budget and the timeline just, it wouldn't work, or the data there is too important to lose. So basically, you end up working off of that system. So that's technology-based design. The next one is called Genius or engineer design, and there's actually a couple names for this one. But this is kind of the approach that Apple takes. Basically, what they do is they gather a bunch of engineers that are, they have experience within a particular area, and they kind of propose a solution, and then they push it out to some user testing to see, how did their ideas basically work, right? And so this is how they can be innovative, right? Because it's the engineers coming up with these ideas and then pushing it out there. And so that's engineered or genius and engineered design. The next one is activity-based design. Now, activity-based design, basically what you're doing is you go in and watch a particular activity, and you record it. You see how ways you can improve it, and then you translate that to the digital space, and that's activity-based design. And then the last one is really the bread and butter of most user interface designers, and this has been a big deal for maybe the last 7 years, and I think we're sort of coming to a stage where, especially when it comes to social, this one doesn't quite apply. But user-centered design basically is you do a bunch of research, you look at who's going to actually be using the product, and then you start using that. You create a persona off of that. That persona is sort of this, it's sort of like a summary of who you'd like to build the product for. What are their behaviors? What do they like? What do they dislike? What challenges do they have? And then you use that to sort of make decisions on how you build the product. So I'm going to use user-centered design as sort of a framework for what we're going to talk about for the rest of the talk. And the reason is because it is one of the most popular ways or most prevalent ways to do interaction design. So it's most people should be familiar with it. Okay, so the idea is that we focus on the end user, and when we go to do user-centered design, typically what you do is you collect information from 3 different areas. So if you don't have information from these 3 areas, you basically, you're making guesses, right? So you have to have collected information from these three kind of areas. So there's users, content, and context. Now, when we talk about users, the kind of information that we're collecting is you go out and you research, well, who are the stakeholders? What kind of what are their return investment? What are they expecting for return investment? What is the experience they're expecting to give? Then you also talk to, of course, the end user, right? So you go and research a number of people that you'd hope to be your end user, and then you consolidate that and make it into a persona. You go and talk to the content managers. You go and talk to the site manager and IT department. So you're collecting all this information about all these people and what their expectations of what the software should do. So that's users. The next one's content. And content, basically, you do sort of like a Noah's Ark sort of thing where you go out and you look at, well, give me a sample document, a unique sample document of each thing that you're going to put online. And you look at, well, what is the language? Like how are we going to speak? Are we talking to engineers here? Are we talking to, does it need to be at layman speak? We also look at what is the volume, how often is it changing? All these things have sort of implications on how you're going to design your software. And then finally, the last one's context. And context is sort of split into 2 parts. So it's sort of, what is my team, like what is the budget? What is the cost? Or sorry, what is the timeline? So when is this expected to be done? What is the capability of my team? Like what are their skills? What is the brand message that we're trying to say with this particular project? So there's all these things that influence, in the end, how your software is built, how it looks, and how it works. Okay, so off those 3 circles, that's what we're going to basically build off of those. So that's UCD. And the problem here is that the whole time we do this user-centered design process, we're focusing on the end user. So we're kind of consolidating it to these individual people. We come up with these personas and how they expect the software to work. But at no point do we talk about social interaction. It was kind of left out of the picture here. So one of the solutions is called the Craftsman Approach, and this was coined by Dan Schaefer. And the idea is that we focus on the behaviors and expected tasks of these people, of these personas, right? So, and what we're trying to do is translate these social expectations online. And so the idea is changing the focus from finding information to finding and managing information through relationships and sharing. And so it's a really different mindset from what we had in the past. And Dan would never, I'm sure he would never say this, but I think I think the concept of Craftsman Approach could easily be, I think it's UCD with a bit of combination of activity design where you're going in and watching people on how they're interacting and taking those interactions in combination with UCD and coming up with, filling in sort of that gap that we're missing. The other thing I should mention is that when it comes to the Craftsman Approach, it contrasts strongly from how we actually proceed with doing this, the strategy aspect or the implementation aspect. So user-centered design is typically, it's very akin to waterfall. So you're doing much more of your research up front. You sort of come up with a stack of ideas or strategies, and then based off of that, you work forward. So it's very heavy upfront research, and the problem, well, not really so much the problem, but one of the things, the nice things about Craftsman Approach is you're not doing as much upfront research. The idea is, and especially when it comes to social, it's so hard to make these predictions. So what you're doing typically is research through design. So you come up with this idea and you kind of push it out there and see how people use it. And that's something what we call sort of paving the cow path, where you see how people are using it, and whatever that path they decide to do, whatever functions they're doing, that's what becomes sort of primary to your application. And I think this is a much better approach to than trying to predict. And we've got to keep in mind that things are constantly changing so fast. So we have this, where we go from design to the, push it out, or goes out to the market, and now the context has changed. So now it's this concept kind of circle where you're going through design, changing context, design, push it out there, changing context. So the Craftsman approach is much better for that. So it's much more, it's closer to the Agile approach, which is what we typically do in software development. Okay, so just as a reminder, we're going to use the users, content, and context as sort of this baseline for what we're going to talk about with, what the Craftsman approach has for us. Okay, so I think some of this area, if we do sort of this activity-based design and we watch what people are doing, the information that we're going to collect is really kind of found in between the users and context. And so that's the kind of the relationships, the communication, the social activity kind of belongs, in that sort of spot. So we're going to go in, and what we'll do is we'll go through each of the different, content, context, and users, and talk about what things we can add on top of the social things that we're missing in UCD. Okay, so if we look at content, typically when we think of social networks, most people think of, well, it's about finding and managing relationships and making friends. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think in real life, most of our relationships is through some shared interest that we have. And so, this is an idea, actually, that Yuri Engstrom, one of the directors or product marketing at Groupon, who's a former Google product manager, he came up with this idea of a social object that is, all our relationships online are based on these social objects, this shared interests that we have. And these social objects are things that are created by users of the system. And so the cool thing about these social objects is that, so I'll give you an example. We look at YouTube. So you put up a video of YouTube, and what happens is people go in and tag that video. They go in and make comments to that video. And so there's this additional value that gets added to this video besides the video itself. And this is actually one of the reasons why social applications become so addictive, right? So if you look at Facebook, for example, your friend puts up a photo of their baby. People go in and say, "Wow, what a beautiful baby!" And so this makes it harder to remove these images. Like, I can't just leave Facebook because I'm going to leave all those comments. I can't just pull those comments offline with that video, or that image. So it has this additional value and a kind of a retentive, feature to it. So when we look at content, we have to look at social objects, and what is going to be the social object for your system, your social application. What is it that people are going to share? Okay, so the next one's context. And when we look at context, and on top of what we were talking about before, which is what is the user value? So what is it that people are actually going to use in your system? Why would they come there? And this is actually a big challenge for a lot of companies, and it will be. And someone came to me actually when I was at DNN World, and they're saying, well, I'm doing a site for hammers or screwdrivers or something like that. How am I supposed to have a social conversation around that? And he's right. Actually, you can't have a conversation around physical objects. But what about the things that you can create with those physical objects? So, I used a screwdriver and a hammer and some of these other tools to create a tree fort or a tree house, for my kids. And now we start sharing these stories and ideas on how to build, these tree houses. And then on the side, these are the tools that I use to build that tree house. So there's this sort of additional value and exposure to your tools. So when people actually come there and they are looking for an idea, they also know where to buy the tools as well. So that's sort of something that you have to consider when you're building your social system. So the next one is business value. So what is it that you're trying to achieve out of the social system? Like how do I make my money off of this? So there's sort of subscriber models. There's using ads. Sometimes it's just like a brand strategy and being transparent. A good example of this is McDonald's. They just recently released a community, and I don't think they're making any money off of it, but what they're doing is they're being completely transparent about who they are. So like there was that what do you call that again? Well, anyways, what they had is someone go in and say, are your burgers actually made of 100% beef? Because there was sort of the stigma, or what do you call it, street story, whatever it is, that's they were using cardboard or something like that, and they were dealing with it head on, and because of that transparency, that boosts the value of that brand, and people will actually go in and buy McDonald's because I trust these guys. So there's brand strategy and transparency that you have to consider as well. And then the last one is being able to observe real world. So when we're actually going in and looking at creating a social system, you have to really look at, well, would these people actually talk about this stuff in real life too? And a really good example of this is, when scientists are doing research, they're not going to share the research they're currently working on, because typically there's a number of teams around the world in different universities that are racing to finish that research first so they can get their money or sell that idea, or the university's trying to sell that idea. And so you're not going to build a social system around them talking about their current research. On the flip side, though, they will talk about the research they've already completed, right? Some of their publications, and the reason why they would do that is because it builds their credibility and level of expertise, and that's how they get more grants to do more work. So this is something that you have to really look at. Well, will they actually talk about this kind of stuff? Is there potential for that? Okay, so one of the last things when we're looking at context, we're going to talk about models, and actually I want to talk about, they are models, but they're more like patterns. And patterns is an idea that's been pulled from architecture. And what patterns are is basically they're customizable solutions to common problems. So an example of this would be like sort of an office space. When you go into an office, there's a problem, which is people need a place to wait for their appointments within the office. So we have waiting rooms, and the waiting room is a solution to that problem. And a waiting room can be any shape, size, height. The walls could be any colors. So that it's a customizable solution to a common problem. So what we're looking at is known patterns that we're starting to see for social applications, how they're structured, what people are actually doing in them. And I should say that I don't think these are a starting point. I don't think this is not the end. I think there's a lot more potential and where we can go and actually start looking at that collaborative potential that we haven't really tapped into yet. But these are the ones that we're aware of now. All right, so the first one's publisher type pattern. And what publisher type is, basically it's a community site that operates in response to some editorial produced material, right? So some authors or a number of authors are pushing up material, and then people going in and communicating after, talking about it, commenting, and building up the value of that particular article. The next one's called member, and that or interest-led, and what the idea is that the people are hosting the conversation. So members are going in and creating an article, and basically anyone could go in and comment on that article. So forums are a good example of a member-led pattern or a model. The next one is contributor, and contributor is very similar to the member, but typically they're a bit more complex. You typically go through your own profile page, and what happens is that now the users get a stronger sense of ownership and attachment because they are seeing their library of stuff, and that library is out there for them to share, right? But because they're going through their profile, it just feels much more personal. And the last one is a product or customer service type model or pattern. And what that is a social system that's built up around a product or a service. So in order to support that service, there's a social aspect. So these are the four big models that that we have observed. Okay, so we kind of went through context and content, and now we're going to talk about users. And so when we're looking at users, there's identity, activity, relationships, privacy, groups, communication, and collaboration. So I'm just looking at the time here. I got 40 minutes, and I may have to, for my last couple slides, I may have to jump to the end. But let's...
Yeah, let's do what we can. Yeah, we're at 47 minutes.
47. Oh, okay. All right. So we look at users and identity. We have this evolution of social online, and what's happened is that a lot of these tools, you know, for social have been around for some time. So we look at like blogs, forums. You know, we've had these for some time. But what some of the things have changed is, take for example, in the past, you could anonymously make a comment. Well, you know, this is a problem because there's, you know, no accountability or credibility when anonymous people are making comments. One of the other things too is, you know, the ability to click on, you know, like someone make a comment and you want to click on it and see, well, who is this person? What else have they done, or what else do they talk about? Well, we never had. There was a problem there that didn't exist either. And there was no way for you to be able to tell, well, who am I online? What are people seeing about me? And so we've created this pattern called a profile page, right? So it's our social self. So this social page, or I mean profile page rather, is, you know, it offers you the ability to, you know, have your real name, a screen name, your gender, and age, all this kind of meta information about you. But also it has the activity that you've participated in. So all of the comments that you've made, anything that you've liked, you know, we'll talk about activity in a second. But so there's this kind of a consolidation of all this activity that you've participated in. And between your meta information and your activity, people get a good idea of who you are. But the other thing too about, one of the other things about, excuse me, about the profile page is that it gives people the ability to see the content, the posts, and the activity of an individual. It gives them the ability to see the content that you've liked. It gives us a means to comment or review those activity, content, and posts, a means to rate, like, and bookmark that person as a favorite. And so, like I was saying, at a much higher level, it gives us an ability to see, you know, who that person truly is through their activity and their personal information. And so what it's doing is it's creating this sense of value, weight, and credibility because you can see who that person truly is. And so this promotes good behavior because, you know, a lot of people that spend the time to build up a really good social self, they're not going to go around and start slagging people because that activity is reflected in their activity stream. So let's take a look at activity now. So there's two types of activity, passive and active. And so the passive is basically stuff like logging in and viewing pages or viewing products. The next one's active, and active has two types. So there's anonymous and named. So anonymous is like faving, liking, bookmarking, pinning, and rating and tagging. The other one is named, which is commenting, posting, and contributing content. Share this. So this is stuff that when you actually contribute, your name's associated with it, along with a date, and whereas the anonymous, not so much. So this introduces a new problem, which is, well, where do we see this interaction? And this is another pattern that we've observed or have observed, which is the activity stream. And the activity stream is where all this information is consolidated, and what happens is it changes over time. Right? So when you first start a social application, typically there's not a whole lot going on. There's not going to be a whole lot of active activity. And so what we end up having is sort of like the empty bar syndrome, which is, you know, you go in and, you know, there's a couple people talking and it's not really conducive for interactions. But what you do with this activity stream is you start filling it with passive activities so that it looks like there's action going on. And so people are more likely to, you know, start interacting. And as these interactions start to happen, these active interactions, named interactions, we start filtering out the passive and start focusing in on the active, like the true content. And so this also means that, you know, we have to start making the activity stream filterable. And the thing about the activity stream is it's probably the most addictive aspect of social applications. And this comes from an experiment, B.F. Skinner in 1950s. He had a pigeon experiment, and what had happened was that you had a pigeon that would press on on a button, and basically would release a piece of food. And if there was a one-to-one ratio where it pushed the food and push the button and the food would come out, the bird would do that up until a point till it was hungry and then walk away and would be completely disinterested. But if we did it at sort of an odd intervals or unpredictable intervals, so we'd press the button maybe every 3 times it press the button, then it would get food, and the next time 7 times. There's a sort of sense of anticipation, and it's that anticipation that it carried the bird. It would continue to eat even beyond the point that it was full, and it was because of that anticipation. And sadly, we're subject to this same sort of phenomenon. So this is what makes social applications so addictive. Okay, so let's talk about relationships now. So relationships, in real life, we sort of have a gradient of friends. There's, no one's just you're my friend or you're not my friend. So online, we basically have 2 levels of relationships. So it's contact and friend, or not friend at all. And so between these 3 or these 2, that typically covers most scenarios. So there's 3 types of friend models: asymmetric and symmetric. Well, typically 2 actually, but the asymmetric is typically something what Twitter does. So you say, I'd like to follow you, and then that person, basically you get to see all their activity. There's the add confirm asymmetric model, which is I ask someone to be my friend and they have to confirm, and then at that point I get to see their information. And they don't get to see mine because it's just a one-way. And then the last one's symmetric, which is what Facebook does. So I ask to be your friend, and when you approve, basically you get to see my information and all the content, all my activity, and I get to see all yours. So when we look at the inverse of this action, which is blocking relationships, that's not so much fun. What happens is that basically you don't want to be sending in notifications of that process, and all your activity gets removed from the other person's activity stream. So any tags that are associated to the photographs disappear. The last one's, well, not the last one. So the next one is groups, and so there's groups sort of an evolution of what we have in real life. So we don't have just one big massive set of friends. We typically have work friends, going out friends, sports friends. So there's this kind of evolution of social nature that we have in real life, and we've kind of translated that online with groups. And this is something that DNN does. So we have 2 types, public and private. So there's public open type, which is I can search for a group and I can start participating. All I have to do is say I join. The next one's application-based, where I ask to become a member of that group, and then the administrator says, sure, you can become a member. And then the next one's criteria-based, which is I have to meet certain criteria in order to become a member. And finally, the last one's private, which is I have to be invited. So I cannot participate unless the administrator invites me. So I'm just going to skip this next slide. And then the last portion of users is the communication and collaboration. And so these are the tools that we have at our disposal in order to make that communication and collaboration happen, which is blogs, comments, forums, questions, ideas, wikis, messages, and notifications. All right, so sort of in summary, social interaction is really complex. And when we're looking at that, when we're looking at sort of coming up with a strategy, you really have to look at your goal and what is the goal for your community. What do they want to do, and will they actually do that? And what is the strategy for your business, alongside of that? And when you're doing that, you want to determine what is your social object. What is the shared relationship that these people are going to have? And in order to do that and to make it happen, we're going to use the Craftsman Approach, which is that activity and user-centered design sort of combined. And the last one is supporting social interaction, which is, I think it's going to become a necessity. Right, we're sort of coming to the point, like I was saying, where if you didn't have a website, in the 2000s, you sort of, kind of left behind. I think with the way technology is going and the growing human-computer interaction, it's going to become necessary to be able to support social interaction. So, because of this massive desire to reconnect socially. And the cool thing about it is, I think this is going to be. I think this is something that's going to be of huge benefit for us because we have these convenient interactions, we have these unlimited resources, and now unlimited qualified resources of human beings online, like qualified employees. And so this equals sort of a mind-blowing potential of collaborative work online. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Ryan. That's great. Okay, so everyone, we have gone quite a bit longer than we usually do when we take a lot of questions. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, reassure everyone on the line that we will be providing the slide deck, and it will also have Ryan's commentary, so a complete replay will be sent to you via email, I think in the next 48 hours. And so you will be able to get Ryan's contact information there and actually see the whole slide deck as well as Ryan's commentary again if you have any questions. For those of you all that did submit questions, we will definitely be following up with you after this session. But I want to thank you all for attending. Great content, Ryan. It was really interesting. A lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of and learned a lot today.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah,
all right. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.